Hello, good evening. Got to call to order this meeting for the school committee of Wakefield on Tuesday, October 14th, 2025. As always, we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda will be the reading of the mission statement. The vision of the Wakefield Public Schools is to graduate students who are confident, lifelong learners, who are respectful and caring members of their community. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing a rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. Next item on the agenda is public comment. If there's any member of the public of Wakefield who wishes to address the school committee, this is the time to do it. Is there anyone here in the studio that wishes to speak on public comment? Seeing none, do we have anyone at home that is in the queue? Going once. All right, we've got no one on Zoom. Seeing that we have no one for public comment, we are now going to move out of public comment. Next item on the agenda is our Student Advisory Council, and I think we do have a couple of students here to present.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, so I'm Ala, and then Maya is also here, and we'll split the the sharing of the events. The first one is
Ala and Maya, can you wait just 1 second? We're just going to see if we can get your visual, if that's possible. Maybe. Oh, look at that. Excellent. We can see you. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. No, it's okay. The first one, our first academic update is WMHS will be holding fall conferences on Thursday, November 20th from 6 to 8, and Friday, November 21st from 12 to 2:20. Conferences will be scheduled virtually unless a parent or teacher requests to meet in person, and more information will be coming prior to conferences about setting up appointments with teachers.
Next up on the agenda is National Honor Society is offering their student peer tutoring. If you have any questions, students can reach out to Ms. Leahy. If they're struggling with any academic concerns, we match up with a senior on National Honor Society that can help them with their classwork.
For other school news, the class of 2027 is selling Thanksgiving Day football, Thanksgiving Day Fenway T-shirts for a fundraiser, and the link to order was in Principal McLeod's recent update.
And then last item, O'Connor Studios is going to return to Wakefield Memorial High School on October 20th for students to schedule their photo retakes.
Great, thank you very much. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for our student reps? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. I believe we have a motion.
We do. Move that the school committee approve the minutes of the September 25th, 2025 school committee meeting and accept the minutes of the October 1st, 2025 student services subcommittee meeting.
Second. Okay, a motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion?
I wasn't present for that last meeting, so I'm not going to vote in this one.
Okay. And Melissa, you too were absent. Okay. All right, so sounds good. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll do we'll just raise our hands for a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes? Okay, I think we got 5-0. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is our budget items. Do we have any business reports? Hi, Christine.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Tonight you have the financial package in front of you from July 1st, 2025 to September 30th, 2025. As you can see for this report, the big difference from last month is we've encumbered all known salaries. So what that means is everyone that has been hired this year for Wakefield Public Schools, their salaries from now until the end of the year have been encumbered. So then we can actually know what our true balance is moving forward. So you can see the encumbrance column is now just over $41 million, and that's primarily because of salaries. So that's for the first report. And then you'll see for the grants, again, as we talked about last month, is that we've had a decrease from what we budgeted to what the actual amounts for our grants are going to be by about $60,000. But we've made adjustments between the local and the grants to make an adjustment for that. So you can see the encumbrances are there for the grants as well. And the last report is the revolving accounts. Is that, as you can see, we have a large spend down happening for the revolving accounts, and we got our first payment of circuit breaker. So our circuit breaker for this year, we're excited to say, was just over $2 million. It's $2,318,804. So we'll get that in the 4 quarterly payments. Now that will cover $2 million worth of out-of-district costs. So that was an exciting number to get. Does anyone have any questions about the financial reports?
I do not believe anyone does. Thank you.
Great. Okay, the next we have a motion for the 2 payrolls of September.
Move that the school committee approve payroll warrants number 12 and number 14 as presented.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'm seeing none. All those in favor, raise your hands. Unanimous, 7-0.
Great. And the last item tonight is we were fortunate to receive a gift from the Walton PTO. We have a motion, I believe.
Yes. Move the school committee accepts with gratitude the donation of $1,000 from the Walton PTO for the Walton school teachers to purchase supplies for the classroom.
Second.
Okay, motion has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All right, 7-0. Okay, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is our superintendent's remarks.
With the chair's permission, I'd like to take items out of order.
Of course.
I'd like to invite members of our Health and Human Services Department up to the table, along with Andrew Cedrone, to talk about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. While they're kind of making their way up, I can kind of give a little background. If you need to pull up additional chairs, you're more than welcome if you want to join. So presenting this evening, we have Liz Parsons, who is our prevention and kind of human services coordinator, or human service youth manager, right? I get your titles correct. And we also have Andrew Cedrone, who is our middle school counselor, but he's also a licensed mental health counselor and is really one of our leaders kind of in our counseling group here in the district, and has kind of given his time to come and kind of help present this information. We greatly appreciate you being here, so thank you so much. Just before they get started on just sharing kind of the Wakefield data, I just want to give a little background for the committee and for anyone that might be watching at home. So the Youth Risk Behavior Survey has been kind of in play for about a little over 3 decades. And so this device, this survey, has been used as kind of a feedback loop, really to help districts understand how to address risk behaviors, but also how to kind of move thoughtfully into the space of prevention and how we might support that in our schools. We also talk about protective factors as well. And so this is something that I think is a valuable instrument and a feedback tool for, I think, all districts in Massachusetts, but especially districts in the Middlesex League. I know there's been this has been in the news lately, and I think that the feedback really has nothing to do with the instrument itself. It has more to do with choice, right? So this this survey, to participate, it is an optional survey. If parents do not want their children to participate, they can opt out. And I think the news or the kind of the buzz lately from another district was really about parents that wish to opt their students out, and I think schools mistakenly administered the survey to their children. And I think parents felt like that was a violation of their trust. And I think that was a sticking point. Since then, I know districts have really taken a hard look at how we're communicating to the community, what the value of this instrument or this survey is, what the challenges are with it. I think we are kind of realistic about kind of how to make this accessible. But I just want to give a little background. But I think what's a critical takeaway for us is really to be thoughtful about how we are thinking about preventative measures and how we're responding to the health needs and the behaviors of our students here in Wakefield. And so we got very little negative feedback. And I think by and large, that was because of our principals and our counselors just really going above and beyond to communicate with families and students about just what the survey is and the ability to opt out. And if parents wish to see the survey, that they could come in or they could see it online. We did it a couple of different ways to accommodate different needs. And so that's just some background. And so that's separate from the survey results, but I just want to give a little background because I think that they're separate instances, and I don't want them to get kind of mixed. Happy to answer any questions anyone might have on that before I turn it over to Andrew and Liz. Thank you so much. Liz?
Thank you, Doug. Do you have the clicker for
I do.
slide
If you
advancing?
you want me to,
Do you want to do it?
you just tell me when to click, I'll
Okay,
click away.
sounds good. You can go back one, please. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you all for inviting us here to present the 2025 results from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. In addition to sharing information about the survey and the results, we're also going to include information about how the data guides programs and better programs and policies, and ultimately how it helps us honor our responsibility to Wakefield youth. So the goal and the purpose of collecting youth health behavior information is directly related to the core values of the Wakefield Public Schools. In order for our students to learn or even love to learn, they must be surrounded by an environment that is respectful and caring, and it's our collective responsibility to ensure that our students are growing up in that environment and ultimately that they have what they need to thrive and fulfill the WPS vision of graduates who are lifelong learners, who are respectful and caring members of our community. The information we gain from the YRBS is crucial in helping us to identify challenges in creating that respectful and caring environment, and to continue and even bolster our successes in creating that environment. So the YRBS is given to middle and high school students to track health trends. It's done every 2 years. For Wakefield, we administered this survey to 7th through 12th graders. And as Doug said, parents and guardians can decide if they want their students to participate. The YRBS helps identify community strengths and gaps, and we also use the data to prioritize resources, like I said before, plan better programs to support students and to apply for additional funding and grants to support those programs. The YRBS measures a number of risk factors, which are behaviors that put kids' health at risk, which include substance use, mental health, and safety questions. It also measures protective factors. Those are behaviors that help protect a young person's health, like trusted relationships, sleep, and physical activity, to name a few. Both risk and protective factors can be associated with multiple outcomes. For example, negative life events are associated with substance use, as well as anxiety, depression, and other behavioral health issues. Prevention efforts targeting a set of risk or protective factors that have potential to produce positive effects in multiple areas. So the survey, you can keep it there. The survey helps us to identify risks that contribute to poor health outcomes, helps us monitor trends by providing long-term trend data on various health risk behaviors to show whether they're increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. It also helps us highlight any differences in health outcomes by comparing different student population based on various factors like grade, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, or ethnicity. The data also helps establish intervention priorities, and it can help us measure progress over time. Essentially, the data is used to help us map which risk factors we need to address more specifically and where we can continue to support our successful efforts. I want to take a minute to note that it's important to understand that even though we monitor differences in health outcomes by subpopulations that may experience more risk, the solutions, interventions, and strategies implemented will help all students in the district. So prior to survey implementation, multiple emails were sent to parents and guardians regarding the details of the survey, including opportunities to ask questions, review the survey instrument, and opt out. An FAQ was provided, and JSI Inc., which is the evaluator of our survey, provided support materials and templates. Wakefield used versions of these materials and leveraged expertise from the town communications director. So now we'll get to the results. So this is a picture, if you can see, sorry, this is really small print. This is a picture of the population of the 7th through 12th graders that took the survey. And the next few slides will describe the category of data and the rationale for asking those questions. And we're going to share any information about any significant differences in health outcomes. First, we'll look at protective factors. Feeling connected to family, school, and community can protect students from poor mental health and risk behaviors like substance use and violence. You can go, sorry, Doug. Yep. So the next slide shows that school connectedness continues to increase across the district. These graphs show protective factors of having at least one teacher or adult in this school that you can talk to if you have a problem. So these are all the students who took the survey and indicated that yes, they do have one adult that they can talk to if they have a problem. This continues to increase overall and by all subpopulations. So there was no significant differences in school connectedness by subpopulation. The next protective factor is sleep. Sleep is necessary, as many of you may know, for physical and mental health, and is particularly important during adolescence. Insufficient sleep is associated with higher odds of substance use, suicidality, violence, physical activity, and negative health outcomes. The next protective factor is screen time. Excessive screen time in adolescence is a factor in adverse health outcomes such as obesity, heart disease, declined cognitive function, and mental health disorders. So the next slide shows the picture of our sleep and screen time. Sleep time is increasing at the high school, and screen time is increasing at the Galvin. So let's start on the left-hand chart for sleep. Galvin is in the red and the high school is in the orange. The Middlesex League is in the blue and should be throughout the presentation. So Galvin sleep has remained relatively unchanged over time, while the high school students report 8 or more hours of sleep on an average school night is increasing over time. The chart on the right is screen time. So students who have reported 3 or more hours of screen time on an average school day, not including homework. In Galvin, it is increased since 2023 from 66 to 71, and where at the high school it's decreased to 74%. Both of these rates are higher than the Middlesex League. Okay, and mental health. Mental health problems in youth are associated with other health and behavioral risks like increased risk of substance use, experiencing violence, and risk of HIV, STIs, and unintended pregnancy. Many mental health behaviors and habits are established in adolescence that will carry over into the adult years, so it's very important to develop good mental health. Here's our picture of the mental health trends at WMHS. They are improving. Indicators of poor mental health have shown continued decline since their peak in 2021. Oh, you get it? Yeah, thank you. Here you see the decline in reports of depression and in general mental health in the past 30 days. We are also seeing decreases in suicide ideation, attempts, and reports of engaging in self-injurious behavior. Depression is an indicator is a way to evaluate the longer term trend of a more persistent and potentially more severe mental health concern. Where the mental health was not good in the past 30 days, that measure is a more current snapshot of how a student would describe their mental health, which gives us an update on how respondents are currently dealing, or at that point in time, were dealing with stress, anxiety, and depression. The next slide outlines the differences in health outcomes at the high school for mental health. We see a couple of differences. Our LGBTQ+ and transgender and gender diverse students are significantly more likely to report experiencing depression in the past 12 months and that their mental health was not good. Male students are significantly less likely to report experiencing depression in the last 12 months and that their mental health was not good. It's important to note, again, that these differences in health outcomes by population arise from the way systems are designed, therefore paving the potential for system and structural changes that can inherently serve the whole population. And at the middle school, mental health trends are promising. Students experiencing depression increased slightly, and it's still higher than the Middlesex League. However, the students who reported that their mental health was generally not good is declining. So also the rate of students reporting engaging in self-harm is decreasing. And like with the high school, we see some significant differences in health outcomes, where in the 7th and 8th grades, you go to the next slide, our LGBTQ+ students were significantly more likely to report hurting or injuring themselves on purpose. Our LGBTQ and Hispanic and Latino students were significantly more likely to report experiencing depression. Another difference in a health outcome was our male students at the Galvin were significantly less likely to report experiencing depression, that their mental health wasn't good, or that they were less likely to report hurting or injuring themselves on purpose. Now I'll turn it over to Andrew to share several strategies being implemented that work toward increasing our protective factors and mental health indicators.
All right. Thanks, Liz. I'm Andrew Sidroni. I'm Upper House Counselor over at Galvin. I've met a lot of familiar faces here. I've had a lot of children of some people here on the committee. I've got a bunch of bullet points here that I'm going to go through. Some of them are, Galvin Middle School specific, but a handful of them are also from the high school and the elementary levels that my counterparts at those levels contributed. So Diana Greider is currently the elementary school mental health coordinator, and Justine Thomas is up at the high school. So they helped me put together a little this list here. So obviously, I think many of you have known, the student support department in general has been growing throughout the years. When I was first hired about 12 years ago, I believe I was the only adjustment counselor in the entire district. It was guidance counselors and school psychs, and that's about it. Now, with central office and the district administration hiring over the years, we're up to probably 10 or 12 adjustment counselors in the district, which is fantastic. And I really attribute a lot of these numbers that are coming down directly to that increase in numbers and staffing. But in addition, the special population program support, right? We've got the STACK program at the elementary level, the TLC, the STRIVE program, things like that. Those programs have been enhanced. They're developing further, the creation of some new programs like the STRIVE at Galvin. These programs are also being staffed appropriately as well with dedicated adjustment counselors for, behavior programs, things like that, which is great. As you know, we administer the SOS depression and suicide risk screening in grades 8 and 10. We've done that for several years now, and that's always successful in identifying kids that are under the radar who have been experiencing some unsafe or darker thoughts that they hadn't shared before with other people. So that's always, no matter what. Every year we run it, we discover one or two students new. So that's really extremely beneficial. Obviously, what we're talking about today, which is the YRBS screening every other year in 7 through 12, which gives us, loads of valuable information to direct initiatives and funding and, target different areas. The elementary school has been piloting some mental health screenings as well, and each year we plan on adding to that to kind of make that a little bit more robust across the elementary schools. The WIN block is an enrichment and prevention block at Galvin Middle School that has been up and running for a few years now, and the counselors, such as myself, have been running WIN offerings, which is great. You know, I had been talking to administration at Galvin for years about how to get you know, our counselors in front of wider populations of general ed students at Galvin, and the WIN block has been able to do that perfectly. So this year I'm running a Changemakers group, but in previous years I've run different classes. Bonnie Warren in 7th grade, she's running a bunch of different groups and things like that, and so are all the other Galvin counselors. So it's great, you know, you can access, it's a fantastic access point to large groups of kids. Similarly, up at the high school, there's the advisory block as well as the peer leader program, which has been going on for a long time. And I know I briefly mentioned the Galvin Changemakers program. This is something that came out of the Positive School Culture team at Galvin, which is a grant-funded initiative to kind of foster school culture. I'll talk about that in a little while. But the Changemakers program is a peer leader program at Galvin that this is the first year up and running. We trained some of the students last year. And it's gotten off to a fantastic start. It's basically 8th graders that are getting into 5th grade homerooms every month. And they actually, we got into the first homerooms just a few weeks ago. And the first question the 8th graders asked me were, can we get in more often than once a month? So they're loving doing it. But there's a team of 3 change makers per 5th grade homeroom. So it's 36 in total, 8th grade changemakers who have been trained by Phil Fogelman, who runs the Changemakers program. And they teach basically social emotional lessons to the 5th graders. And they work with Jen Hart, who's the 5th grade counselor, and you know, back and forth in terms of what the 5th graders are working on, how to, you know, enrich the lessons and things like that. And on top of that, they're doing a bunch of other initiatives around the school just for school culture, social emotional learning, things like that. It's been fantastic so far. So obviously the health department, you know, the evidence-based curriculum we have in K through 10, I believe, right, is the Michigan model. I know the high school does specific lunch groups that are targeted towards different populations. You know, they have a little bit more flexibility up at the high school than we do at Galvin around lunches, but they can target groups, maybe say they'll have an anxious student group, right? Or they could have a shy student group, or they can have, I know I've been working with Andrea Keogh, and she's starting to do a substance use group for during lunchtime to meet with kids once a cycle, basically kids that are either in the diversion program or who have acknowledged that they're struggling with substances and want to set goals on reducing harm. So she's, you know, having a group where she'll meet regularly with them to help them through that. So a lot of targeted group at the high school, which is fantastic. Clinical supervision, a couple of years now, consulting with Donna Cossack from the NAN Project and Elliot, who is a tremendous resource to our student support services team. She consults with us on very tricky cases. She basically knows everyone in Massachusetts when it comes to mental health. So whenever we need a consult with anyone else or where to get resources or supports, she's absolutely incredible. Lastly, again, we continue to foster all of our relationships in the area. I know we were on a call earlier with WEF, and they're introducing us to a new mental health partner called Launch that's in the area. We're meeting with them. And I know we always have different mental health agencies that are new to the area. They come in, they drop off a few flyers, they introduce. So we're really, you know, continuing those relationships. And lastly, you know, this is a newer one out of the I Decide curriculum at Mass General that I use for the diversion program. We were contacted about a program called TOPS, which is about mental health education for student athletes. And so we had, you know, connected with the athletic director here at the high school. And if that potential project goes through MGH, the high school could be an early target site to pilot the program for mental health awareness for athletes. So a lot of really good stuff going on for social emotional well-being. Any questions, by the way? As I go through these, you know, feel free to shoot any questions around any of the initiatives or things going on.
I just have a quick question. It's kind of unrelated to what you on the slide, but do you still have the grant funding that allows you to do that extra period at the end of the day, or does that not exist this year?
The 8th period?
Yes.
Yeah, so, so we use that out of the Stop School Violence grant. And so what Pete's referring to is we had worked on some restorative practices around kind of looking at discipline a little bit differently. Instead of traditional punitive consequences of a traditional detention, you can think of in middle school where, you know, a student sits and doesn't really have much to do and maybe does their homework or is just kind of staying after class for a while, those types of things. And we got more into a lot of restorative practices. So we're continuing the restorative practices. However, we're not necessarily, we still call them 8th periods, but we're just doing it through the more traditional model of having teachers staff them. But yes, it's still for the most part going on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. A couple more categories to report on. The next one is for substance use. It's associated with increased violence, injury, risk of addiction, and negative educational outcomes. Alcohol use remains relatively unchanged at the high school and middle school. You can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. Youth alcohol use at the high school is showing a slight decrease since 2023 and a sharp decline among high school students since 2017. The Galvin rates remain the same and slightly higher than the Middlesex League. The decline over time is in line with overall decreases in underage drinking that we're seeing across the country. However, alcohol remains the #1 and most commonly used substance among youth and can contribute to several other risk factors, including violence, injury, and sexual assault. 7th and 8th graders were least likely to perceive drinking 1 to 2 drinks every day as harmful. The next measure is for vaping. The high school has seen a decrease in vaping in 2025 from 11 to 7% and a slight increase at the middle school and a little bit higher than the Middlesex League as well. There were no significant differences by subpopulation. And we also measured use of nicotine pouches, chewing tobacco, and dissolvable tobacco products, some of which are new and emerging nicotine products. The lifetime use measure of that was 7% at the high school, so 7% of high school students had ever used that type of product, and 2% at the Galvin had ever used that type of product. For marijuana use, currently using marijuana at the high school level, that's trending down at the high school. The Galvin rate's slightly higher and higher than the Middlesex League. On another note, the high school students' perceived risk of harm of using marijuana once or twice a week is among the lowest rates of all the drugs. So the reason I mentioned perceived risk of harm for both alcohol at the middle school and marijuana at the high school is that when a perceived risk of alcohol or drug use is low, that means the student may be more likely to use it. An indicator like this is an opportunity for continued education awareness as well as thoughtful design of the community environment to limit access and availability. The next slide outlines an emerging trend that we need to monitor, which is underage gambling.
Do you have a question?
Oh, sure.
For the marijuana use, vaping, and alcohol, are these trends pretty much similar with national trends, like for all 3 of those categories?
The comparisons here are with Massachusetts.
Okay.
But I can find you the national trends.
But for state trends, it's pretty much following the same trajectory.
The 2025 Massachusetts numbers aren't available yet.
Okay.
When it becomes available, I can answer that.
Okay.
So the underage gambling. We found that 24% of WMHS males reported engaging in gambling on skill games where I was playing, i.e. sports, cards, dice, or video games, etc. So this is important to monitor and to note because gambling is illegal for teens and it can be harmful and addictive to their developing brains. Research shows that children introduced to harmless betting by age 12 are 4 times more likely to engage in problem gambling later. And among all addictions, gambling is linked to the highest suicide rate. So it's definitely a trend to monitor and collect more information with qualitative data collection and listening sessions. And yeah.
What is harmless betting?
This is was taken from the Department of Public Health and information about that. I think it's in quotations because people are assuming that it's harmless. They talk about, and Andrew's actually giving a whole presentation. I should kick this over to you. They talk about priming young people in video games, games of chance. but
Yeah.
he's given a whole presentation next week about it. So.
I am. Yeah. So yeah, I've spoken. I gave a parent university talk on this about a year ago, and then I also presented in Melrose, and Dot Butler over in Winchester has asked me to go over there as well, because it is really significantly on the rise. And what they talk about, the harmless betting, really a lot of times at a young age, right? We start with Super Bowl squares. We start with maybe doing a small game at I don't know, I know at least at my family, at Thanksgiving, they'll do a small game for quarters or things like that, right? Harmless betting with your family. But also, the bigger issue is through video games, which is basically VC, right? Virtual currency that you use in video games, and that you have to either win by performing well in the game, or you can purchase with real money and trade in for things that will make you more successful in the game, right? If that makes sense, right? So it's huge in sports games, NBA games, NFL games, hockey games, things like that, all the traditional sports games that are on Xbox and PlayStation. But they're also popular across all different games. Fortnite, all the big ones have those types of things. So much so, interestingly enough, Australia, of all places, completely banned what they call the use of loot boxes or blind loot boxes in all video games in their country. Because they've really noticed that it mimics being in a casino. It mimics gambling and that risk reward central, system for kids, and it really is a very slippery slope, increasing into high school, where I hear a lot of students transitioning to fantasy football, right? Fantasy baseball, fantasy sports, and then it goes into the money associated with that, and then usually middle to late high school, it turns into straight traditional having a bookie that takes bets for sports usually. So, yep.
It feels a little like a grooming environment where they're bringing kids along, and with the commercials now that you see, where you see not only athletes that students watch and love, but comedians, actors that are all kind of supporting this online gambling, and it can be done with a cell phone.
Yep. Well, that's it. Just it, right, Doug? Is that I have countless stories of kids. They have apps that are games to mimic casinos, and you use fake currency. But then you just click a few more buttons, and you put in real money, and you can earn real money. So it really is targeting kids to learn gambling, and it is. You can use a parent's credit card or just swipe it and whatever, and you can get in and actually gamble. So that's a big kind of newer area that a lot of people are talking about. Very risky.
I think when you think of betting, I think people might be used to cards and dice and even playing quarters or just a number of things.
Yep.
It's harder to envision it. I'm glad you mentioned sort of Australian loot boxes, because I think that's something that isn't necessarily on parents' radars. That this is happening in game, and just it's a different. They might be used to hearing about it as screen time, but they don't realize that there's actual virtualized betting that happens within that sort of space. And and I just don't think parents think about it when their kids are playing like NHL or NBA on a PlayStation or an Xbox, that it's a feature set. So it's good to let people know that it's just something that they have to keep an eye out for. So, thank you.
Definitely.
You're the next slide.
Oh, next slide. Addressing substance use, is that where we're at? Mm-hmm. All right, yeah. So as some of you may know, for, a while now, again, I've been one of the diversion educators up at the high school. So if a Wakefield high school student is caught under the influence or in possession of a illicit substance at school, on school grounds, at a school event, even in the town, on a weekend, caught by the police department, right? They can be referred to the diversion program at school. And what that is a little bit what, I talked earlier about with Pete when he brought up kind of more restorative practice or more non-punitive, non-traditional forms of discipline, right? We know that historically, the Just Say No to Drugs initiative back in the 80s was not extremely successful. And harm reduction and much more education around substance use and working with the youth is in a more realistic practice is basically a little bit more meaningful to them. So we use the I Decide curriculum out of Mass General Hospital, and it's been fantastic. It's great, and so if someone's caught with substance at the school, They have a 2-hour class with me, and then they have a 2-hour follow-up class with Andrea Keogh at the high school. So we have 2 of the classes, and then they have a follow-up session with her as well. And they have the possibility, like I said, to join the lunch group with her at the high school. And we focus on harm reduction. You know, it's it might sound alien or maybe even potentially standoffish to some families, but for example, if someone is struggling with using a vape every day, right, the first goal we make is just using it every other day, right? Or your first goal is to not using it in school, use it at night for a while, right? Not using it during school hours. So taking steps towards reduction and, you know, towards elimination of the substances. But so it's a little bit more of a realistic approach. We've also started to use that at Galvin for instances of substance uses at Galvin. Again, when I started here 12 years ago or so, it was very rare to have any substances found at Galvin on students. However, unfortunately, it's increasing really every year. This fall, but we're in October, and we've already confiscated, you know, a vaping device off of a student, right? You know, we've also heard rumors of other students and things like that. So one of the other bullet points I'll probably just jump ahead, actually, is that we are looking into vape detectors at the middle school level and with the new building as well. You know, it's kind of a lot of the new buildings out there, and a lot of kids I see in private practice talk about their high schools that have them. There's a lot of pros and cons to them, but they are something that's kind of being rolled out in a lot of schools, you know, locally. So that's something we'll be looking into as well. Obviously, the school nurses, athletic coaches, and captains get trained in substance awareness. We do the SBIRT screening in grades 7 and 9. What that is, that's a one-on-one screening with the school counselor or a nurse to talk about substance use. And again, that's a great opportunity to get in front of all the kids and get a gauge of where kids are. I actually really like it in 7th grade because I know that, you know, you're getting up to high school soon, and that's when, you know, most kids are more exposed to it, right, when you're heading into high school. We do parent education, you know, parent university talks a lot, right, around these topics. I believe In Plain Sight, right, that's one of the big popular presentations at Parent University to find, you know, potential substance use signs in your kid's bedroom or things like that, right? The police department, Kelly Tobin runs that one a lot. Up at the high school, right, changing the culture of post-prom parties, senior night, things like that, right, to detract from traditional historic times where kids would abuse alcohol. Obviously, collaboration with the Wake Up Coalition, right? That's a huge supporter of the schools, and specifically in the youth action team. Youth action team at Galvin and at the high school are just huge, right? 70+ students, and they're always doing campaigns around mental health, substance use, protective factors. They do a lot of great signage. We've got a lot of these, you know, great, not bulletin boards, but kind of big posters that we have up in the hallways at Galvin of high school students, and some statistics around vaping. So they're always putting out a lot of materials, you know, to deter other students. So a lot of great things going on. Any questions around substance use interventions?
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Question, sorry. You just talk a little bit more about that I Decide.
Sure.
That curriculum you said is that 2-hour sessions?
Yeah, 2-hour sessions.
2-hour sessions? Yep. And that's kind of their alternative to suspension if they get caught on.
I believe they still do have a punitive suspension consequence as well, but it's also to be enrolled in the class.
And that's just generally around all, like, substance abuse, or is it like addictive behaviors?
It's anytime a student is caught, again, it could be in the community. Let's just say there's a party on a Saturday night, underage drinking party in the community, and the police show up. They'll take down the names and they refer, you know, to the school who's there. Or if someone is, you know, a teacher thinks a student is potentially intoxicated in the building under the influence of something, or maybe they drop their bag and something falls out, things like that. So usually if you're caught with a substance or under the influence of something in the building or on school grounds, football game, things like that.
Okay.
All right. Our last category is violence, bullying, and discrimination. So experiencing violence, bullying, and discrimination is an adverse childhood experience associated with negative mental health, behavioral health, and educational outcomes. And the impact of experiencing these risk factors might be long-lasting. At the high school, the rate of students reporting, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. The rate of students reporting skipping school due to feeling unsafe in or on their way to school. Oh, is the next slide?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. It's just a lot of text, so I thought people might want to read along. The rate of students reporting skipping school due to feeling unsafe in or on their way to school remains similar to 2023, but higher than the Middlesex League. Reports of electronic bullying increased, and there was also a slight increase in reports of sexual violence. High school students reported decreases in dating violence. And of course, any rate of students feeling unsafe is something we'd want to address. The differences in health outcomes at the high school is that our transgender and gender diverse students were significantly more likely to report experiencing discrimination because of their gender identity, and to report skipping school due to feeling unsafe in or on their way to school. Again, research shows that creating environments that support subpopulations also serve to support the entire student community. At the middle school, our students report higher rates than the Middlesex League peers of bullying on school property, electronic bullying, skipping school because they felt unsafe, and experiencing sexual violence. Our LGBTQ plus students were significantly more likely than the average middle school student to report being bullied on school property and to report experiencing discrimination because of their gender identity. These are concerning trends, warrant the need for additional qualitative information and to determine more tailored prevention and intervention solutions, especially the part both at the high school and the middle school about skipping school because they felt unsafe. It's a big question whether they feel unsafe in school or on the way to and from school. And so the intervention or prevention activities put in place to address each of those may be different. So again, we could conduct listening sessions with the students to get more of a context. And Andrew, you're next.
All right, so a handful of things that I haven't mentioned yet. There's a lot of crossover here, obviously, but addressing school culture overall. One of the things we've been working on is addressing the updated DCAP, the District Accommodation Plan. Again, it's for a sense of kind of connectedness and belonging, and kind of addressing all students and kind of a universal design approach to meeting all of our needs. The health curriculum obviously addresses bullying, social media, healthy friendships, dating, as do a lot of the groups that are run at the high school, and at the middle and elementary level. We're always having professional development for staff and, in services for students and speaking engagements. Doug was in a meeting with me earlier. We talked a lot about like belongingness and connectedness, right? That's kind of like an area that we're kind of working on and targeting. And I think that the Change Makers group is a perfect example of how we're getting closer to that and really making kids feel connected. I think going back to one of the earlier slides, I think one of them was that I saw that made me smile was that I think Galvin's connectedness was higher than the Middlesex Leagues. I like that one.
Yeah.
That was a good one. That's one I'll take, definitely. But yeah, obviously we're doing a lot of guest speakers. I know we've got a great one coming up, I think, right before Halloween on the half day. We've got a really good speaker coming in. The Positive School Culture team at Galvin does a lot of staff team building and positive culture events for the staff, as well as in the building as a whole. Similarly, up at the high school has a Unity Week. They do small group discussions, keynote speaker, those types of activities. Looks like there's a new bystander intervention and healthy relationship peer leadership group at the high school. Again, these are all the groups that the adjustment counselors and the student support team up at the high school run, similar to what we're running at Wynn Block at the middle school. For example, some of those things are like the Pride Club at Galvin, the Black Student Union Club up at the high school. The Amigos Club is in English Language Learners Club that had started for a few years and I think fell apart a little bit, but some of my change makers are trying to get it back up and running again. And I potentially think we're going to be funding that a little bit from one of the Cummings grants that has a little bit of money for a staff advisor to run that, which would be great. We also funded responsive classroom elementary school training across a couple elementary schools to work on classroom management and things like that. Second step as well is another curriculum used at elementary school level. Oh, lastly, the SAS student safe and supportive schools team is so safe and supportive schools is an initiative out of the Department of Education, is a needs assessment, and so this is our third year now. So 2 years ago, when the student support team was awarded a grant, a Cummings grant through WEF. We put together a SAS team, so it's a representation of student support members from elementary, middle, and high school, and they conducted the needs assessment on a kind of wide macro level, and then they narrowed it down for a deeper dive, and they actually identified a few areas of need, and this year they're actually carrying through some action steps around what they discovered. So that was a really great, widespread initiative that we've been working on. So, again, overall help out.
Great. So finally, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, Andrew, is there any thought to, I know when we talk about substance abuse, and I've seen some of the programming in Parent University around that. Have you ever thought about doing something surrounding bullying in Parent University and allowing parents, maybe giving them some insight into what like microaggression might look like in their students and sort of what that, 'cause it's a slippery slope as it relates to like empathy and sort of, I see it in sort of that population around.
It's a really good idea, because we've done a lot of social media awareness, right? But I feel like that covers a lot, but doesn't probably directly target exactly the bullying, right? And I think a lot of times what I see a lot is kids saying they're being bullied when they're really experiencing just mean behavior, right? And so a lot of times, I work with kids around what is bullying and what is just mean behavior, and teasing that apart. But also, yes, I think helping parents realize and see the differences and see little pieces, what to look for on social media. It's hard to explain, but there are a lot of very small, nuanced actions that take place on social media that really are teasing, mean behavior, or even bullying that parents would look at and never know because they don't know the kind of inside scoop of what that means in middle school, right? Tagging someone in a video. Oh, what does that mean? Oh, you just tag someone in a video, no big deal. But when you tag someone in a certain video that has a connotation associated with it, that's actually really mean-spirited, and if you're doing it over and over again, that's actually bullying, but a parent may not understand that that's what that is. Is this kind of what you're...
It is. I think sometimes parents can be unaware of some of the ways that their students can interact with other students, and sort of just think that it's kind of that like locker room talk, or
yes,
and it can come off, to your point, as teasing or mean,
yep,
and not bullying. It's a fine line, and especially if you're on the receiving end of that, there might be no line.
Yep.
And so I just don't. I see this, and I appreciate everything that happens in the school, but I really think a lot of this like sits at the dinner table, for lack of a better term.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's a place where partnering and sort of helping parents identify that, as much as the work we put into sort of substance abuse, the mental health piece around sort of violence and bullying, I think could use some similar attention in that way to sort of help caregivers sort of be able to identify that in their own students. I think some people would be surprised to sort of see some of the things that are maybe said or
very much so,
or actions.
Very much so. I totally agree, and it's funny because I live in the middle school world, right? I hear it every day, all day. I'm getting kids' stories and things like that. It's going a mile a minute, 100 miles an hour, and I have two, high school age sons myself, and so I'm kind of surrounded by it. But for people that aren't in that world, when they hear some stories, they can be appalled. Like, oh my God, that's what they said. That's what they did. This is normal. This is not normal. This is common. This is, and they're floored. So yeah, probably bringing some of that awareness out I'll have to figure out what a title would be for that one. But a parent university, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, no, just to back up what Stephen said, I can't agree more that I think one of the big positive impacts of this presentation isn't just looking at what we're doing to try to address the data, trends that we're seeing, but I think it's trying to get as many parents as possible to look at a few of these slides, to look at the mental health issues, to look at what's happening with substance abuse, both positive and negative trends. But you got me thinking of that Netflix show Adolescence, which was won all those awards last year. And it was a scene in the second episode where the cop, who's the father of one of the kids, was like, wait a minute, what do you mean this means this? And I found out that this entire social media thread was this really insidious behavior that the police had no clue about. And you're in this world. I teach high school. Right. I found out last year from one of my seniors about, what'd you call them, boot boxes? Whatever the thing that's in the, what is it? What did I say, boot box? loot boxes.
Yeah.
But this kid told me that thousands of dollars, that he had spent in Fortnite over between 6th grade and 12th grade. And just stuff that he threw it away it was nothing. And then I find out that there's a ton of people that are spending obscene amounts of money on this game that I would have no idea.
Yep.
I see my kid play Fortnite. So even though I'm in the world, I'm really not. There's just things that I think I know that I just don't know. Yeah. And I think that one of the positive things about this presentation is really trying to open up people's eyes and be like, no, this is what is really going on. I guess one question I had was, you have all these bullet points of all these interventions, right, for each of the three categories. I guess, do we? And there's no way to collect data on this, I guess. But
it's hard.
If you had to say which of these is working, if you had to pick one,
right,
of these things, about school culture, and I know you said we've hired more adjustment counselors.
Yep.
That's the easy fix.
Yep.
We're throwing money at it. But what's a good what are these interventions? What do you think in your mind, even anecdotally, has worked?
Well, I think to me the biggest kind of metric of all of it is school connectedness and belonging. Trusted adults. To me, everything will always come back to that. I'm a counselor, obviously, so my role, my job, my goal is to know every student in my grade, know their name, know what sport they play, know what they're good at, what they're struggling with, things like that, right? So school connectedness to me is always going to come back, at the end of the day. And that's why I joked when I had said, when we were going through the early slides and I saw that Galvin school connectedness was at a higher level than the Middlesex League, that was kind of something I was proud of, But I think the lower rates of depression that we saw, can be attributed to kind of the work we're doing with the SOS screening and getting kids help. I think all of the additional staff that we're having hired in the district around student support is just only going to have a more positive effect, in the district in terms of all these. I think some of the numbers that are rising that we're seeing around substance use and the social media stuff, those are going to be trends that are, I think, hard for any district to combat. But I do agree with both you in terms of I also always think coming back to working with the parents more is a really good thing, right? Because it does the trends that we talk about, whether it's bullying, substance use, gambling, they go so fast and they change so quickly that it's very difficult to stay on top of them. They change, every week there's a new app, every week there's a new substance. I'll be working with kids in the diversion program around the Zins, which are new now, right? Which is the powdered, do you know what it is, Pete? He's like, it's a nicotine pouch. So a lot of kids actually in the world that I've been working with are quitting vapes, the electronic nicotine delivery devices, and switching to an oral, it's a pouch. It's maybe made out of the material that you would think of like a tea bag, and it has nicotine powder, right? So you're, on one hand, you're saving your lungs a bit, but it's really unknown around what this is going to do to your oral, safety, things like that, right? But it's constantly changing. And, when they came out, they were 2 milligrams and 4 milligrams. But now there's all these ones on the black market you can get, and they're 6 and 8 milligrams. And, so the potency changes. It's to stay on top of a lot of these things is just really hard. So if you think of chewing tobacco, back in the day, they had pouches with the tobacco in it, but now it's the same pouch without the tobacco. It's just the nicotine.
And it's not as regulated because it's just nicotine. So it's not a tobacco product.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have the regulatory oversight.
Yeah.
So it's more accessible to younger people, and the delivery system is more efficient.
Yep.
In a negative way.
And the potency is so much higher. So then there's not much research done around what that potency does, what that method does. But it's very similar to what they did with THC, right? They basically synthesized. They took the THC out of marijuana and they put it into an oil, and they you use it to vaporize it to use it, right? And they basically just took the nicotine, forget about the tobacco, and just took the nicotine straight. And putting that in pouches with mint flavoring, things like that. So yeah, it is. It's very hard to keep up with all these trends. Similarly, the trends around we think about anxiety and depression. There's trends on social media that go around, whether it's involving self-harm or anxiety or things like that. Different memes, different trends, different stories online that we constantly have to keep up to date with. So some of that is just tough to chase, and that's the stuff that we always going to be a little bit on top of. But overall, I do think that Wakefield does a pretty fantastic job with student support as a whole. Mainly because I think we're in line very well with our administration, and I think that's really what kind of sets us aside.
I want to speak to what you started about, sort of what one thing should we be focusing on that's kind of universal. And I think you're right about the school connectedness, but also the connectedness. It sounds like you're saying, what about parent outreach and education, and family connectedness or connectedness to the community are also protective factors. So it's not just the school's responsibility of making sure we have enough trusted adults in our schools, but also in our community and in our families. And so some of those fundamental skills and education and awareness could happen at Parent University. It could be part of the culture. Certainly the community could take on pieces of that around trusted adults in the community, because all of those will protect young people from multiple negative health outcomes, as I hope you've received the message today. Any other questions before I talk methodology? Okay. So just lastly, the survey, as I mentioned at the beginning, it was administered in April 2025 through our 7th through 8th, 12th graders. It was offered in multiple languages. Parent-caregiver passive consent was used. The survey is an adaptation of national and state surveys, and an FAQ page was made available. The evaluator, JSI, shared the caveat that we must interpret these data with caution and focus on group trends, as we did tonight. Response rates have decreased over time since we first began implementing in 2017. I believe this is true across all the districts. This year, but JSI reports that anything around 60% of the total population is considered representative of all students. At the high school this year, the response rate was 58%, and the Galvin response rate was 66%. This caveat speaks to the importance of participating and collecting these data to help get well-informed picture of risk and protective factors that will continue to guide prevention and intervention strategies in the school and the community. And lastly, our key takeaways from the data. There's a need to dig deeper into the data by conducting listening sessions to help explore the differences in health outcomes for subpopulations and to gain more information about the context of certain behavior, like gambling, for example. We should also take a moment to celebrate the encouraging progress we've made in increasing mental health and protective factors. Andrew highlighted several strategies being implemented across the school and the wider community to support students and reduce risks. And it's the spirit of this collaboration and the shared problem solving, especially around such complex issues, that has driven our progress so far. And it's that same collective effort that will continue to fuel even more positive changes as we work together to further the Wakefield Public School core values of respect and a caring environment. Thank you so much for listening, for your time, and if you have any more questions, we have to take them.
Sorry.
When do we learn what kind of grants are available to help with some of these interventions you've called out?
So the Stop School Violence grant has just ended. So that was a large one that lasted a few years. Currently, we are in year 3 of a Cummings Foundation grant that WEF applied for on Student Support Department's behalf, which was great. And that was just basically extended over the summer to, we can call it a 4th year, which is great. So yeah, Doug and I were actually just talking, moving forward, we're going to start to looking ahead to see if we can pair, this one running out with what we're going to apply for next. Because yeah, a lot of times, a lot of the funding is part of what we need to kind of keep some of these initiatives going, whether it's stipends for staff or curriculum or other pieces.
Yeah.
And I know when we've talked about the survey in the past, and you mentioned it earlier, one of the goals of the survey is not only the data, but also that this helps support getting those grants.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. We used all the data from the YRBS when we applied for the Cummings grant.
Thank you.
And the health department also applies for grants and will be applying to support some of the school connectedness, a trusted adult, addressing some of the norms and perception of harm around some of the substances, and also support some of the interventions like the diversion program.
Just a quick question. You had mentioned kind of the response rate from students. So where is the survey and what setting is it disseminated to students? And if 42% of high school students didn't take it, are they opting not to take it? Is it parents opting for them not to take it? Combination of both?
Oh, sorry, what was your first question?
In what setting?
Oh, setting.
Like how is it
It's electronic. So they all receive a specific link, and they take it electronically. And it's got skip logic, so if they say, no to something, then, they skip to the next thing, if there aren't more questions in that category. And your second...
But it's done on their own time, or is it done during school time?
It's during the school time, usually. Okay. I'm not familiar with the specifics of how it was rolled out at the high school and at the Galvin, but there's usually a specific time that the students have, and then they close the link, afterwards, just to keep it, nice and... minimize the time that the links are active. And the opt-outs, I'm not sure of the number of opt-outs per school, but we do see, I can tell you what the, I think what the response rates were by grade, if that's helpful, but sometimes if it's lower at the high school, if it's given in the spring, if in some districts, I'm not saying that happened here, but that could happen if they're out already or out, doing something.
And I can speak to a little bit, so we typically administer during like a win block or during advisory block. Like Liz said, it's a link on the computer, and for at least a couple months in advance, we send out a Google form for families to opt out. And so on the day of the survey, we gather all of the opt-out students and bring them to a different location. So no one inadvertently takes it that wasn't supposed to. However, at any given time, someone their family didn't opt them out, they could just say, no thanks, I don't want to take it, and we honor that as well. I think that probably happens up more at the high school, We actually had, on the contrary, we would have some students at the middle school level, we'd say, hey, your parent opted early. I had no idea, I would have taken it. Like, oh God, thank God, let's go, you're opted out. So that's why we physically make sure they're in a different location, the kids that are on the opt-out list.
Thank you.
Just 2 quick questions. One was, and this was building on Mr. Fontanella's question earlier, and I think I've asked this previously, was since we've been doing this, the YRBS, for quite some time, the question is about like the programs that come about, right, the grants that we get to impact, student belonging, et cetera, and to help with some of these programs that are detrimental to our students' health. Have we kept kind of a running record of the programs that have been used and kind of superimpose them on the data that we see year to year to see the impact that they've had. So like we get the data that says, hey, we need this, we need that. But have we looked at that in relation to the actual data we see year to year to see if there's been an impact on whatever program, whatever grant, whatever we're doing to address some of these needs of the students?
I think it's difficult to do that on such a large scale because you saw the list of strategies that are being implemented and put in place that can address multiple issues. So I think, I can pose that question to our JSI, the evaluator, but I think it'd be difficult to say that, to take that kind of, to superimpose what we've done and say, oh yes, because we've done X, Y, and Z strategies, that means this is declining. Because they all can have such a complex impact. I think it would be more important to think about how are we evaluating each strategy itself to see whether or not what we set out to do was effective and reached some goal. So that would be my initial response, but certainly something that we would talk to our evaluators about. Again, these trends are over years, right? And as Andrew pointed out, the trends, some are emerging, some are changing, so that may be difficult to kind of, as much as I would love to see that nice and neat superimposition, that I'm not quite sure if that's something that's feasible.
I don't know how, for example, just off the top of my head, I know about 8 or 10 years ago, early in my time of being hired here, the YRBS results were indicating that thoughts of suicide in Wakefield students were significantly higher than the Middlesex League. And that was a big issue. And that's when we decided to start the SOS screening in grades 8 and 10. So, I would love to look, you're probably right, I look at the signs of suicide data of suicidality and depression in the students, the YRBS, over the last 8 to 10 years, and see if that has come down. Now, is that a result of us doing the screening and early identification and getting those students help? Potentially, right? But yeah, I know it has come down, right? I think that was one of the recent ones that had been lower. So
I think it's a really complex question because this is not like clinical trials, where we're developing something and there's a one-to-one correlation, right, between something that we're developing and then an immediate response. These data that we're sharing, it's essentially a report. It's a moment in time when a student might be thinking or feeling a certain thing, and that's what they're reporting, right? And I like Andrew's response because, and I also like the way that this presentation was set up because it's not one response. So if these data are just a prompt to want to learn more or know more, the space to do that is with students, right? And so one of the things that I think that there's widespread agreement on in Wakefield, and I think this is a trend that's common at elementary, middle, and high, and I think it's made a difference, is when we see data that we don't know about or that we're concerned about, the counselors go to those kids, go to those groups to try to understand more, right? And so the suicidal ideation is a perfect example of this. Numbers were trending high. Again, the data is just a prompt, of kids reporting in a moment's time. What do we do about that? We now have screeners at elementary or high school, middle, and elementary, right? And elementary is a screen. It's been developed recently, right, in the last 4 or 5 years. So of us to try to get in front of kids. SBIRT is us getting in front of kids to understand more about the data. So not only has it, I think what these data in youth in the YRBS has impacted, I think it has impacted professional practice, if that's reasonable to say. And I do think that the common response about counselors wanting to know more from kids and wanting to seek those students out, I think has been a basis for developing connectedness. for developing a student's sense of belonging. Diversion is again a perfect example, right? Years ago, students would get in trouble, and sometimes if it were a police matter, it's like, okay, we're going to turn this over to the district attorney. It's now students are charged. It's a police matter. They go before a judge, right? What we found is that students in those spaces had difficulty recovering or getting back to their community or feeling any sense of, they felt a tremendous sense of shame, and they didn't feel like they belonged, right? They didn't feel safe. So the responses changed where diversion was developed. So instead of going before a judge or the district attorney and then a judge, what happens now is students are often referred to what they call diversion. So you might appear before a clerk magistrate who might say to you, yes, there's corrective action. You could be suspended from school, there could be community service, that's corrective action. But the restorative part is where Andrew and his counselors pick up this work and say, okay, and the administrators as well, say, okay, like how can we kind of bring the student back in, or how can we keep them close so that they can participate in their learning, so they can participate in extracurricular activities, right? That's I think the key to this. And rooted in all of this, and I'm just kind of summarizing what you said, Andrew, is this notion of trust, right? When trust and relationships are established, everything else kind of falls into place. When we didn't have those things and we just had data that indicated, yeah, alarming data. What do? We collect more data. I don't know, and hope that it goes down. I think our counselors and our teachers have been directly responsible. I want to make sure I'm clear with this. Have been directly responsible for creating safe spaces for kids that, affect attendance rates, affect academic performance, and also affect students' willingness to share things that they're struggling with before they escalate. And that's our goal. And I think that is kind of the big takeaway for us in this work. It's not easy, but this is in relation to back to your question where we started. There's no kind of one-to-one correlation. This isn't like doing medical trials for a prescription. You're asthmatic, you take an inhaler, you breathe more effectively. Fantastic. Your saturated O2 goes from 91 to 98. Great, we can measure it, it's one-to-one, we can kind of look at the time. But working with students and helping them over time to develop, boy, it's hard work.
But in a sense, some of the programs aren't directly related to like a behavior or a habit, right? If it's something we're doing for vaping intervention, right? Something we're doing for substance abuse intervention. We can track the effectiveness of the programs that we've used to do that almost one-to-one because that's what specifically they're geared at. Do you know what I mean? So I understand the whole of just self-harm, suicide, like it could be a number of things that go into those things. But the ones that we do put in place, those can be tracked because you're looking at whether or not they're effective to reduce something on more of like a moment in time, like you're saying on the survey. But I would just say it would be good practice to maybe develop something like that.
I think we can certainly continue to look at that question. It's a complex question, and I appreciate the prompt.
One thing that it reminds me of what you're asking about is, because we've done the SOS for so long now, we can compare the SOS data we received when the students were 8th graders to when they're the 10th. So we can see if the same students screened high and what they reported, and if there were any new screens and things like that. So that's been really interesting to see over time. Are the kids still reporting a high level of depression or suicidality, or was it reporting from the past and things like that? So that's always helpful. So I think that brings a little bit more what you're talking about, right? Is kind of look at students over time, and you can get a better picture of are the initiatives working and are they helping and things like that. So
last question, I promise this is less complex, I guess. Have you looked at, we talked about one of the major things that you look at is connectedness, right? In this survey, which is a moment in time, it's a simple question. One of the key indicators of whether students feel connected, there's maybe two, but it's really school attendance. Just to check that data of, like you're saying, oh, we're seeing, like at the Galvin, we're seeing more connectedness, right? Have we checked and looked at that, those same indicators there in like our attendance, in our chronic absenteeism, in our daily attendance, right? Is that something that and I know it might not be, it might be more of a scope of like in the district, but I would say that that'd be a key indicator of whether students feel connected or tethered to the school, is whether or not they're there. And then specifically with different subgroups, right, that may or not have been necessarily included in that presentation or captured in the YRBS.
Absolutely. I mean, attendance is a huge juggernaut right now for all districts, right? I mean, it took such a significant hit during COVID, and I think, many districts have yet to get back to their baseline with attendance, with their pre-COVID numbers. It's just really changed the culture in families and the community around attendance and showing up for school every day, just as it affected people showing up for work every day, right, and what they can and can't miss. So what has changed is that administration and counselors meet regularly on attendance, and we actually have, I forget the name of it, there's some new, you guys might know, what is the new date?
Open architect.
The open architect. That have you guys discussed? I don't know tons about it yet, but Megan has just been very excited to share that with me, and we're all excited to get me a username and share that with the counselors and things like that, right? But up the last few years, we've been meeting regularly to assess attendance. I know that Andy Tetrault, the assistant principal at Galvin, and I have been doing home visits. We've been in students' home for kids who have been struggling to get into school. I haven't looked at the exact attendance trends. I mean, I still think we're crawling out of the hit that we took during COVID. But yeah, no, absolutely. That's definitely a sign of connectedness and getting into school and being a part of things.
There's maybe a couple comments and then a question or two, but just to connectedness, I remember the amount of times that I've seen sort of the YRBS results, it always goes back to having a trusted adult. And I think things that we've talked about before is sort of an uptick in clubs and sort of having a low barrier for sort of having kids be able to organize clubs within our schools, whether it be the Galvin or the high school. And I think that's a place where you can be connected. I think what I saw tonight was you pushing into win time and advisory on sort of a more, I want to say like a more social level instead of sitting in like a one-on-one classroom setting, which could, for some kids, while that's necessary, for others that are maybe just out of reach, it can be a little bit intimidating. Having a more casual setting, I think, is a great idea. I think you really can catch some kids that are just very much on the fringes that maybe they kind of fall off. So I absolutely think that's a fantastic idea to sort of be showing up in those spaces and creating those connections. My two questions were, I don't know if I should ask what I think the easier one is or the harder one, but I'll start with screen time at middle school. 3 hours sounds excessive. Per day is what I saw. That sounds insane to me.
It's actually low, believe me.
Does that include, that has to include like cell phones?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not just like they're sitting down at home, like in front of their home TV.
No.
It's like any time.
Yep.
Okay. Outside of school,
Any
not
screen time,
including homework.
Screen time is really, it's through the roof. It's through the roof. I check it with kids in my private practice, the groups that I run, and sometimes we'll just be talking about it with my students, and we'll ask them, and if we're talking iPhones, many of you will have iPhones, but I don't know, I'm sure that Android users have something similar, but you can check how many hours a day you've been on it, right? And there are certainly some outliers, right? If you use, if I'm at the gym and I'm listening to music, right, and I'm on Spotify, that counts as screen time, even though I'm just listening to music, But yeah, it's, I would say 3 hours a day, and when I interview students, I mean, I've seen 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day. So that screen time is really a huge piece. And if you notice, the two things that stood out to me for Wakefield was that the screen time was higher than Middlesex League, and the sleep was lower.
Yeah.
Right? So I always pound with all of my students and in my private practice, sleep, diet, exercise, screen time as the biggest the biggest key features to maintaining mental health, success, overall everything in schools and as you know at this age and really any age. But the screen time and the sleep has huge impact. Sleep has an impact obviously on attendance, right? A lot of times we have kids who are staying up late on social media, right? If they don't have screen time restrictions, they're staying up late, they're missing sleep, and that affects school performance, school attendance.
Yeah. My other question was, I'm curious, does JCI, so we're sitting at the threshold that they mark it at around 60%, saying that that the data is actionable, is you know, that we can do something with this. We're kind of at that, hovering at that participation rate.
They say that's representative of all students.
Okay.
If it's anything lower than that, down to 30%, it would be representative of those students who took the survey.
Okay. Do they inform us as to like methods that we could use to sort of increase participation? Is it something that they look at? I mean, assuming, and I think you said towards the end that it's kind of, that's the trend sort of across the state. Do they, as the testing organization, sort of put together like focus groups? Do they talk about like how to improve participation?
They haven't yet, to my knowledge, but it is a question. We're not the only district with the rates declining, so it is a question that my colleagues and I across the region have asked. And, you know, that's part of why we wanted to include this presentation about the value and importance of the data. And similar to your other point, or someone's other point about getting to parents and caregivers, I think that information also needs to flow down to our parents and caregivers. So I would say that that's a key piece to increasing the opt-in. Another strategy I've seen that was successful is engaging youth and youth leaders in conveying information and awareness about this data, why it's important. I mean, this is all about them, and they have a right if they want to know, you know, this about their peers or themselves and what their potential health outcomes are, or what the risks are. I've seen successful implementation of the survey as a whole when youth leaders are involved in communicating its value and also communicating its results.
To that point, do we sort of cast this back out into the student population?
Good question. No, I don't think we do. Do a little bit, the youth action team a little bit maybe?
Yeah. Historically, I haven't been in this position during a YRBS administration, but historically the youth action team leaders have presented specific data points in health classes, and then we use it to drive our strategies, to inform our strategies.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to know they're in health classes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for that
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks.
And if there are things that have come up this evening in regard to the youth risk behavior survey that the committee would like to hear more about, especially in regard to design, development, you know, timelines, you know, we just took it, so won't be given until the year after this one. So, you know, we're more than a year away from it being given, right? So it won't be given this year, it'll be given next year. And next fall, next September, October, we'll get a notice that will say, you know, would like to propose these questions, and then we can get feedback on that, you know. I do know what a lot of districts are doing is they're kind of sharing or trying to engage more people in that conversation to see if there are, you know, parts of the survey that you object to, and if it makes the survey more accessible to expand questions or exclude questions, and I think that is kind of an ongoing kind of conversation. The other part that's important, and Liz pointed this out, is that, you know, unless the way the technology works, unless students report in the affirmative, right, answering questions in a certain way will prompt other questions to be asked to clarify kind of a student thinking or understanding or how they might be feeling in that moment. But if they were to answer no, then that kind of cuts that kind of section off and they move to the next. Is that accurate, Liz? Okay, just want to make sure I'm good there. But that could be some ongoing information that we might be able to share, or if you have other questions, either from yourself or from the community, please let us know, and we'll do our best to get answers and make those public.
The part that was new to me tonight from the presentation was the diversion piece. Is that something that we've recently implemented, or we're just, maybe I missed it in prior years when it was discussed?
10 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, I missed that
So,
from
but it
other
was-
presentations.
But it's been in place in other districts for much longer.
Okay.
So implementing that was like a big move for Wakefield. But I think it's been a tremendous benefit for our students. So it's been in place for 10 years.
I would agree. Yeah, I mean, you read about things
Or not, 9.5, 10 years.
in the paper, and it's nice to know that there are some things being done to try to help in those situations.
Yeah. Okay, to move on? Great. I think we took a minute or so longer than I think we had planned. But I think we appreciate the conversation. I know we'll certainly have a lot to talk about in central office about next steps. And so more to follow. We don't want to keep you. You're certainly welcome to scoot. If WCAT could bring up the next slide deck, please. The next item that Kara and I are going to talk about are district goals. This is going to be a common framework that the committee has seen before. And so it is also consistent, and the structure is also common with the school improvement plans that were presented by principals, right? And so this is just, we'll try to move through this quickly. We'll take questions at the end. And so what Kara and I have been doing a lot of work on, and principals as well, is we've really talked about aligning the work that we're doing, so that, if we're talking about an instructional strategy or improvement planning or goal setting, we're trying to bring these things in alignment, right? So that we're with our significant goal being, student achievement, and really when we talk about student achievement, we talk about academic and non-academic outcomes for kids. Academic outcomes are, higher levels of demonstrations of learning, right? It could be an assessment, it could be a project, it could be any number of things where kids are kind of showing what they know in the classroom or in other spaces. But that's the achievement piece. But when we talk about non-academic outcomes, we're talking about areas like belonging, connectedness, again, school climate, right? And students giving us feedback, or us being able to access information to let us know that we're making a difference. But those are things that we're kind of spending a lot of time talking about. The district goal number 1. Next slide. This district goal is in alignment with the work that we started a year ago. So this is an edited goal. What's different here are the action steps, okay? And so one of the things that we've done, you've heard me talk about the evaluation system that we have, that we had in the district. So probably about 12 or 14 years ago, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed gave districts the choice to either adopt the state supervision and evaluation system, to adopt it one for one, or to adapt and create your own. It had to kind of mirror the same framework, the same structure, the same steps. And at that time, Wakefield chose to work administrators and teachers side by side to develop our own supervision and evaluation system, our own rubrics. Since that time, the department has, we're outflanked. They have more resources, they have more personnel, they update rubrics very quickly, they, develop rubrics for different positions very quickly. And so, what we were watching was something that we developed at one moment in time. And then the department put out theirs when it's side by side. I think ours was very competitive. And then what happened was, the department, developed rubrics, refined rubrics, developed rubrics. So they were on their third generation when we were updating our first draft. and we didn't have rubrics for different positions in the district, which was a bit of a worry for us. So one of the things that we have in place is we have set meeting time. It's commitment through the contract that we have, that the administration will work with the WEA and teacher leaders on our evaluation process. So for the last few years, we've worked collaboratively to really look at the new rubrics that were developed. And what we chose, we kind of worked with them this past year, and we have gone to not adapting, but we've adopted the state rubrics, which is a plus for us. And I think it's representative of the relationship that we have with the WEA, and I think the trust they have in us, which we take very seriously. So Kara has done a tremendous amount of work in this space. Do you want to share a little bit about that, Kara?
Sure. Yeah. So, do you want to go to the next slide?
Sure.
And I can just speak to one of those. Yeah. So, as Doug mentioned, one of our district committees with WEA and administration involved our supervision and evaluation, and we started last year with a mixed group, administration, teachers, also union leaders on the committee. And what we did, as Doug mentioned, was we started off with the rubrics, and we looked at what we had, what DESE was offering, and overall came to all the agreements that Doug just mentioned, that overall the state manual, state rubrics were just better all around at this point in time. And then what we did was we went into the process. We compared the state process versus the Wakefield process, agreed that there was a lot that we were doing in Wakefield that could just merge and align with the state process in terms of our timelines and our meeting structures. And then what we did was we talked about what were reasonable numbers of observations that made sense, and all agreed to that too. So we took all of this information back to faculty meetings, and ultimately the union took a vote before we left before school ended in June to adopt the state model. So that's where we are right now. This summer, we worked with administration to talk about what this would look like, to share out consistent talking points at all of our opening faculty meetings, and just make sure that we're implementing in a consistent manner. And TeachPoint is our platform that we use. We updated all of our forms on TeachPoint to reflect the state forms as well, which is still a work in progress. Some aren't quite where we want them to be, but each year will get better. Okay, goal 2, again, this was, we mentioned in an earlier meeting that I really like how we designed the district goals this year. It was more of, we gathered information from the schools, they developed their building-based goals first, and we found kind of common themes across the levels to then work backwards and develop our district goals afterwards. So the rich and challenging curriculum, similar to the past, we're really continuing to focus on implementation, promoting best instructional practices, analyzing student data. I would say in the past several years, we've been very just technical in terms of our curriculum reviews, recommendations, implementation, systems. Now, as you saw in the first goal, we're really focused on instruction and carrying out what does this look like in practice in the classroom. So next slide, some of the things that we're working on this year. We noticed that at the elementary level, we didn't have the same curriculum support structure at secondary, where we have, at middle school, we have curriculum liaisons who work with the curriculum coordinators. High school, we have department coordinators. We're trying at elementary this year, an elementary curriculum leaders team, where we have teacher representatives from each grade level who work together with our curriculum coordinators to really talk about implementation, how it's going, get feedback, become kind of just like a step ahead of their colleagues so they can be building-based support as well. So we're trying that out. So far, so good. We were a couple of meetings have already happened this year. So we're pretty excited about that model. And it's we're at the point at elementary now where it's not just one content area. We're looking at ELA and math together with that group. We're continuing. We've talked a lot. We'll get an update at one of the next meetings from Joanne Marks, our science curriculum coordinator, 5 through 12. But we're coming off of a science curriculum review where we did a thorough analysis of our science education, K through 12, And one of the recommendations was met that the big recommendation that was made was that we would develop our own units, standards aligned units based on our most current information. And that work has been in progress under the guidance of Joanne Marks since last spring and then through the summer as well. So continuing to do that work and then pilot units as they go. We're also, a big focus for us this year is our social studies curriculum review, which has already started, K through 12. So you'll hear more about that throughout the year too. So we're continuing to focus on that. And Open Architects has been mentioned a couple of times. We are really excited about that data platform to be able to use to look at our student data. We have our MCAS results in there, iReady, Dibbles, some other common assessments across the district. So it's really going to be helpful for us. And then our data meeting structure is something that continues to be a work in progress as well, where we actually have forums to look at student data, talk about it, and create action plans as a result. So we're continuing, those are continuing to be more and more common at every level, and we're continuing to refine those structures.
Thank you. So you'll see that district goal 1 and 2, 1 is similar to, same with the school improvement plans, right, if you remember. This also aligns with the research of Elizabeth City, and kind of triangulating. 1 is kind of supporting teachers, the other is supporting curriculum, and the third is really trying to individualize the work, right? And how do districts respond to what students are producing, right? What does growth look like for students, right? And growth is a critical part of this because it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you end, right? And so if everyone is considered on the same scale, someone can take a soft A just like someone can work really hard and just kill themselves and barely get a B, right? So we're just thinking more about, and we're learning quite a bit from teachers in terms of district goal number 3, which is really individualized student learning. We have kind of intervention blocks now in the district, and it's us being able to take time with students to kind of really understand what they're producing and how we might intervene to kind of help them participate at a higher level, or kind of develop the skills to kind of be more effective in their learning. So this is really kind of an important goal for us. We also want this to align with the work that we're doing. So you heard Kara talk about data meetings, right? And so data, one of the things that we heard is that it takes a really long time to get information in one place. What the dashboard through Open Architects has allowed us to do is we can kind of correlate information real time. So for example, we can look at students in a given frame of time whose attendance might be trending downward, whose grades also might be trending downward, so that we can intervene more quickly, right? So that's an example of one of the things that we're looking at or trying to figure out with Open Architects. We're also looking very closely at student attendance. So nice, you're correct about student attendance. So just a snapshot of Wakefield, our attendance in the aggregate is pretty good, 94.5%, which you look at that compared to other districts. We're very competitive in the aggregate. But if you disaggregate that information and look at that 5%, it's not an equal distribution. It is students that are having some difficulty getting into school, right? And what we're doing to support this work is we are sending out or looking at data attendance reports weekly. So for example, we're looking at every single school, every single student, and looking at trends and kind of what that data looks like. And I will clip that data and send a note to a principal and say, hey, can you tell me about, they shoot me a note right back, this is what's happening, this child has been ill, or we're working with this family, or which we haven't had before. So that's something that we are kind of taking on and doing a lot of work with, just as an example of what this might look like real time. So that's a quick snapshot. Again, one of the things that we're trying to do with these goals is to make them aligned to the work that we're doing, and we want to be able to demonstrate, this was our intention, this was the difference that we think it's made. One of the things that I think has already started to show itself, you saw the results information we got back from MCAS, right? We're one of 13 districts that are kind of back at a level where they were ahead of the pandemic, right? And if you look at that list of 13 districts that are back in math and ELA, there are only 3 public districts that are in that group of 13, right? There's Amherst, Wakefield, and Arlington, right? And so there are other districts that have gotten back to pre-pandemic levels in one content area, math or English, but we've gotten back in math and English. Now, please, we're not, going to hold this up forever like this is a trophy. This is a moment in time. And one of the things that we're looking at is how did we get here? And I think that that's based on, by a large part, by a lot of the work that Kara and her curriculum team are doing. So they kind of should be recognized for that achievement. But the other part is that the work teachers are doing is in the classrooms is quite good. We're getting around on curriculum walks, and the work that's happening in classrooms and how teachers are connecting with kids and relationships that teachers have with kids has really, it just feels different. I think it feels different for students. It feels different in schools, and so more to follow there. So save you all a little bit of time. And so we've made 3 district goals, and there are 3 superintendent goals. And we've also kind of highlighted on the superintendent slide 1B, 1D, that correlates to the superintendent's evaluation instrument. So if you wanted, we can kind of reference these as a refresher before certainly my evaluation, right? So standard 1, or superintendent goal number 1, will prioritize instructional practices that engage and meet diverse needs of all students. These practices will promote academic, social, emotional, and equitable outcomes for kids. So academic, I talked about in the beginning. Non-academic would be social, emotional, and equitable outcomes, right? In sort of understanding what the distribution of what achievement looks like and what non-academic outcomes looks like for different groups of students. You're going to hear more about that. In terms of action steps, we're going to monitor standards, right? And we're going to look at, not only the instruction that's happening, but we're also going to kind of take the lead from teachers in learning more and understanding more about really what's working well. We're really going to work to and hear from teachers and coaches about what lessons and what things are really making a difference for kids in terms of connecting students of different languages, cultural backgrounds, to really emphasize inclusive grouping and scheduling practices. So one of the things that we've learned in kind of the work that we're doing is one of the things that's really showed itself is how we're grouping and scheduling students. Sometimes it's really exceptionally done, and sometimes we haven't done it as well as we need to. So we're going to look really hard at how we're scheduling, and there'll be kind of more information that will happen there. And you can see the last bullet, is just to integrate belonging and inclusive practices, just understanding how kids are feeling. Do they feel included? Do they feel seen, valued, supported in class? We're learning that, kids that are thriving kind of are able to report most effectively in those spaces about how they're feeling about those things. If an easy kind of rule of thumb, when you think back to a teacher that you might have made a difference for you, or when we talk to students about teachers that have made a difference for them, they'll say things like, I love that teacher, or that teacher loved me. My favorite example is a student I was speaking to at the middle school, who shared with me, I'm a terrible math student. I'm awful. It's my worst subject. I said, what's your favorite class this year? Miss B's class. I said, oh, that's math class. He said, yeah, but Miss B she doesn't teach math, she teaches me, which again goes back to this. It's a reinforcement of this notion of, how kids feel and the connection they have with their teachers really makes a difference, and we're seeing it. Standard 2, or excuse me, not Standard 2, superintendent goal number 2, we're going to collaborate with town leadership, the new town administrator, and the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee to develop a comprehensive, sustainable plan to build an accessible high school, secure NEASC accreditation, and to assess the staffing needs at all levels. So this intersects clearly with our new town administrator and the new leadership that's happening in town, and also the experienced Finance Facilities Committee that we have in place to be a check and balance as we're kind of entering what we think are going to be maybe some challenging fiscal times, right? We're looking at what's happening in the world, we're looking at what's happening in the state, and we're just trying to be thoughtful about the work that we're doing and how we hope to kind of address that. So these are the action steps. We're going to be kind of scheduling regular meetings with the town administrator, finance and facilities, to, again, really kind of start this work. And I think we have finance and facilities, I think we have a meeting on the 24th.
A week from Friday.
Week from Friday. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So we're going to continue to report on the new high school. We're also going to be looking at staffing at all levels, right? One of the things that we did in last year's budget is we kind of made a commitment to no new positions unless we needed to kind of bring new positions on to accommodate students or keep students in district. And before new positions were brought on, we would look at reconstituting any existing positions, right? So superintendent goal number 3, you've seen this before, this frame before, just really thinking about communication and how we engage the community. And so the action steps here are really to strengthen communication about how students are doing, right? But we also want to include counselors in this, right? We shouldn't hear just counselors just once a year when we do IRBS. We should hear from counselors more regularly because they're doing really outstanding work. The school culture team at the middle school, the Safe and Supportive Schools grant, and the kind of what we're learning there, I think are all examples that you heard tonight that will carry over in this space. We're also looking at how to measure and reflect student outcomes. And you heard about Open Architect, and there'll be more information on that as well. Happy to answer any questions, and I can go back to any slide you might like to see. I know that was quick.
I didn't,
questions?
I didn't see Dr. Lyons in your communication piece or your last slide deck. Are you still doing the community calls? Or is
We are.
okay.
We are. We'll do them quarterly.
Okay.
Right. We haven't. We used to do them every week. We'll do them quarterly now, but
Okay.
we're kind of trying to revamp one of the wrinkles that we're doing this year. We're trying to change up the podcast a little bit. We have a new guest, the school committee chair, has joined us for a podcast, and the hope there is to include maybe some student facilitators or students in that as well, and we think that will help our communication as well.
That's great. You went a little over on time, but that was a good podcast.
That's good.
I don't know how big your audience was. It's at least one.
I think it's.
I think I said
At least 3 that are in attendance.
It's already in our syndication, right?
Yeah. Joe Rogan has been in touch. And,
Take it on the road.
so, any questions about goals? No? Thank you. Technology department update. And so, just to keep everybody in the loop, Donna Cushman has taken over as the interim director of the technology department. We're doing kind of a reorg there based on her interim assignment. And so our two, so Tom is taking on more responsibility and will kind of also be managing the two technicians. We have one technician in space, Jonathan, and we're looking at hiring another one right now. And so they've been great. I think Donna Cushman has been just really exceptional stepping into the space that was vacated. And I think she's advocated for more professional development, advocated to take on projects differently. We're also looking at the new technician that we bring in to be able to work both on state reporting and also our student management system, right? So with scheduling. So if we want to change scheduling, we need more people that have expertise in our scheduling system. And so that's something else that we're going to look to support differently than we have in the past. But that's a quick update on our technology department. Other comments and updates, time is going very quickly. Fall sports are going pretty well. I think you've seen football tickets are for sale for the Fenway Thanksgiving Day game. Volleyball played this evening. Kids are really scheduled, especially our high school kids. They're really scheduled, and the number of students that we have participating in extracurricular activities, both athletics, band, chorus, theater, I think it's greater than it ever has been. Tonight, the rain just ended, and sure enough, band was setting up in the parking lot, They are relentless in their kind of practicing, but that is a quick update, and happy to answer any questions. I know I'm going quick, so I'm just trying to respect time and attention spans.
Are there any questions for Dr. Lyons? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, I just have one comment I wanted to make. So, last year when there was a referendum about the MCAS to make it so that it would not be a graduation requirement for high schools in Massachusetts, basically DESE has stated that every district should come up with some kind of, it's called competency determination, some way that everyone would know that if you graduate from Wakefield High School or whatever school in whatever public district you're going to, that because the MCAS no longer is like this, standard that if you pass it, you've met the, competency to be a high school graduate. Now every district has to come up with their own determination about what makes a minimum competency for graduation. So when I put this on the agenda, I had to talk to Melissa, who is actively in policy and communications, looking at a policy for this. So thank you for that. And I know we definitely need a policy on the books for this, but also, in addition to the policy, we need to have, the district has to come up with some kind of, standard, for this. So I just want to bring that, to the public's attention. Yes.
I thought we had a standard. I thought after MCAS came down, we had a presentation where we went through all of the building blocks to what, very quickly it went down, and Kara presented on this is what is determinant for our district. Are we saying we just need to framework that?
I think what we have to do is it has to go, because we have to we have to give it to the state, and we have to put it under some kind of policy, where that will kind of fit, that determination will fit under.
Yeah, we voted on the policy back in the spring, but we needed to retrofit it to the guidelines that DESE came out with before we resubmit it to the state, and then we'll re-update the policy book. We're having a subcommittee meeting on Thursday to talk about that.
The reason why I brought it up is I saw from the Massachusetts, so now we're getting boring, but as if what I said wasn't amazingly exciting before, but Massachusetts Association of School Committee sent out a thing that was saying that the DESE commissioner was kind of potentially looking at something else that would be a much different type of minimum competency, which would be a pretty big change. So that, kind of put it on my radar. I was like, oh, but in that it did say that we had to come up with a policy. So that's why it kind of got on my radar, just in case. But no worries, that nothing's been officially done, but that was kind of on the radar that they shot out.
We have a working draft ready to go.
Yeah, there we go.
I think Melissa is drafted
Yeah.
for one in August. And,
Yeah.
and I think, we've taken that and refined it and shared it back, and I think we're ready to go. I think it's in line with our handbook, our program of studies, and I think it's also in line with what the state is asking for. So I think we'll be good.
Until they come up with a new idea.
Yeah.
We're good for right now.
Okay.
Yes.
And yeah, that's all I got. Next item on the agenda is subcommittee reports. Finance facilities, Mr. Markham.
We have not had a meeting since the last meeting, last school committee meeting. We had a meeting scheduled for this Friday, but through some work commitments, I needed to reschedule that. With the blessing of the subcommittee, we've rescheduled that for a week from Friday, so Friday the 24th.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Biscatello, waiver and personnel.
Great. Yeah, we have not met as a subcommittee. However, we did make some good progress on coming up with some dates to start some negotiations with WEA. So our first negotiation meeting will be November 5th, and then we have 3 additional dates that both sides have agreed to, and that's November 19th, December 3rd, and December 17th. So looking forward to start talking at first about some of the schedule changes that could be forthcoming. So more to come.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Ingalls, student services.
Student services, we met last week and had sort of a precursor to tonight's meeting on the YRBS and just kind of talked through some of the points that were brought up to the larger committee this evening. I think our next meeting we'll have to put on the books. I think we'll invite CPAC to join us and talk about sort of like we had mentioned before, how we can sort of liaise a little bit better in that space, see what opportunities we can have for some partnerships. So more to follow.
Thank you. And Ms. Quinn, policy and communications.
So we have not met since the last school committee meeting, but we are meeting on Thursday to finalize the competency determination policy and also to address the career and technical education middle school pathway that we need to also submit to DESE. And we've gotten a couple of other facilities updates from MASC that we'll try and integrate into that if we have time on Thursday. If not, we'll tackle that at the next subcommittee meeting. Okay. And then we're also finalizing the policy book on instruction. We're just waiting for some edits, and we'll be able to bring that hopefully soon.
Okay. Great, thank you. Are there any liaison reports? Mr. Nauman.
CPAC met last week, and it was right after last week's special education department and CPAC meet and greet, which from what I understand, I was not there in attendance online, but it was a little bit more successful than the previous year, with more families attending than last year. Just some other dates. November 5th will be the CPAC business meeting. Parent University and CPAC are doing a joint event on December 11th that's working on effective communication at home. Right around, I guess that was my paraphrasing what was going to be there. They're also, CPAC is looking to hold like a social, it's a Sport Inspire Cafe sometime in November. We're going to be talking about maybe a date when that may happen. And then I had also, as it was just mentioned, I'll be the point person just to communicate and just flip the invites for our student services subcommittee over to CPAC so they can join. That's all I got there.
Great, thank you. Report. Does anyone else have a liaison report? All right, seeing none. Moving on to the next item, future dates. Our next school committee meeting is on Tuesday, October 28th at 7 p.m., 2 weeks from today. And next item, does anyone have any comments? Mr. Davis.
A couple of items. Saturday, October 18th is going to be a busy day in 2 different ways. At noon is your opportunity to buy tickets for the Jolly Jingle Express, which is the big fundraiser for the Wakefield Music Boosters. For those not familiar with the Wakefield Music Boosters, they provide significant funding to our music and theater arts programming in the district. And that event will take place on December 14th at 3 different times, and that leaves from Anderson Station in Woburn. And then your only opportunity to see the Wakefield Warrior Marching Band at home will be also on October 18th. They will be on at 8:30 in the evening, but there are many other bands playing at that show that will take place at Landrigan. And UMass Lowell, I believe, will also be performing as well that evening.
So that's a competition.
It is. So it's a NESBA competition. There's only one competition that Wakefield is hosting this year. Last year, there were 2 that we hosted, and so that will be the only opportunity to see them in town this year.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments? Mr. Ramos.
I want to comment that today was the first day for clubs at the Galvin Middle School, and I just thought I was thinking about it from the YRBS. Both of my kids are really taking advantage of those offerings at that level, and it just gives them another space to, when you think about a trusted adult, when you think about feeling belonging in school, the things that they're involved in, they've just made more connections, more friends, and sort of deepened their connection sort of to their own community, created their own community, and the way that they did that was through sort of school groups. And so whether it's sort of sports or sort of arts or theater, just whatever it is, I feel fortunate to be in a community where sort of that's available to them. And so just thank you for the people that make that possible. I will segue that right into the fact that next Tuesday, the 21st, is the Science Olympiad trivia, their fundraiser for the Science Olympiad kids from one of the clubs that one of my kids is in. So for those that are, I don't think it really depends if you win. I think it's just if you have a good time. So come, get a bunch of answers wrong, and do it with people that you really enjoy, and spend some money and support a bunch of great kids who are doing some good things. So that's all.
Location of that?
That is the Elks. Thank you, Chris.
Any other comments? All right. Seeing none. Last item, I think we have a motion to adjourn.
Move the school committee adjourn its meeting on Tuesday, October 14th, 2025.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? All right. We are adjourned.